Hi there, it's Laurent from Microcks. So this week we released both Microcks 1.12 and the new Kubernetes Operator version 0.0.4. And I want to showcase what's new in this release and what you can leverage to integrate Microcks in the full GitOps process. So first, let me show you the new Microcks install option on this version 0.0.4. Let's assume we use the guide to install the operator in a Kubernetes namespace like explained on the Microcks website. And here, we have the operator running, and we also have two different versions of our application running, exposing our pastry catalog API. We have version 0.1 and version 0.2. Okay. And first thing I want to show you is how easy it is to deploy a stripped down version of Microcks. Previously, you had to configure Keycloak for authentication, but now you can just easily disable it and deploy the core services. So let's check the custom resources. So first, let me show you my Kubernetes. So I have 3 pods running, the operator, and 2 different versions of the API pastry services. And also I have those services running. Okay. First thing I want to show you is the new custom resource that allows you to install Microcks without Keycloak. So you can see that you're installing the version 1.12, and you just have to put this flag here to disable Keycloak installation. Okay. And from that, it's really easy, just applying this custom resource to your clusters. Microcks, and that's it. So in a few seconds, you should have some new pods that appear. And you can see that we have just the Microcks pod, the MongoDB database, and also the Postman runtime, but just here. Okay. So looking at my Kubernetes dashboard, everything seems to be green, and I think I can use my application right now. Of course, I've got to, allow the custom certificate, and I've got my Microcks instance running, and it's now empty for the moment. But you can see in a few seconds, I've got Microcks running on my cluster. Second thing I want to show you today is the new test custom resource. With this new CR, you can easily launch tests in Microcks just by creating custom resource on your cluster. So imagine we want to launch some tests on our deployed pastry catalog API version. The first thing we'll need is to define some new artifacts to load into our Microcks instance. And for that, we will define an API source custom resource. So you can see an API source, it has a name, it targets our Microcks instance here, and we just put references to do 2 different artifacts to load into the instance. So it's as easy as applying this to the cluster, API source, that's it. And you should see in a few seconds that now, yes, I have a new artifacts loaded, new mocks that are provided, but also a new test suite. Okay. This is for my API pastries API definition. Okay. So now I want to launch some tests. Let's inspect the new custom resource for the test. Test API pastry version 0.1. So you can see that here I can define very easily a test. Okay. Running on my Microcks instance and targeting this interface definition. And the endpoint I want to test is the one that is deployed locally, my first version. Okay. And I will try to validate its OpenAPI schema conformance very easily. So now I can just run a test, applying it to my cluster, version 1, just right here. So I can browse the test. Okay. I've got a new test here, and you can see that I can test API pastries, this one, number 1. So now you have a status in the test. You can see that, the result is a failure, but that is expected. And the status is ready. That means that the operator has finished the reconciliation. And you can see that we have an URL here just to access the test result. So here, when I look at the different test runs, okay, I can see the failures and I can see all the details in my Microcks instance. But at the Kubernetes level, I've got the raw result of the test and an URL to access the details. Okay, so now let's run a new test, a successful one. So let's check another resource test, and this time version 2. Okay, this time the same test, but on my endpoint version 2, just right here. Apply this test. Okay. And in a few seconds, I should see, a new test, and this one is successful. So this version 2 of the API is confirmed to the spec. That's cool. So you can see that we have the test history here in Microcks, but also looking at we have all different test history that are just kept here. So that can be convenient, but in case you have a passing test, it could be also cumbersome to manage all this history into the Kubernetes cluster. So for that, we have another way of launching tests. Let me just check. Test, yes, no retain. And you can see that here it's basically the same custom resource, but I just specify a new retention policy here that says delete on success. So when I apply this test, you can see that test, no retain. Okay, the test is running. Might have the result right here. Okay, let's see that the test is kept from few seconds. Okay, and just after the next reconciliation loop of the operator, this one is now dropped from the Kubernetes history. So it just takes a few seconds so that if you have, for example, a workflow that is run with stuff like Argo events or Argo workflow, and you want to be informed that a new test is successful or has failed or whatever, you just have this short-lived custom resource that stays in the cluster that cleans up some resource before you can proceed on the next stage of your workflow. Yeah, so that's it for this demonstration. I wanted to show you that it's now super easy to manage your Microcks deployments and test using Kubernetes resource, and I hope you liked it. Thanks for watching. Bye.